some of those questions we ask you where the application and where those touch points are in your kickoff with us. And so we're making sure when we're presenting that visually back to you, we've already mocked it up. Show us the wall in your office you want us to design and show where that brand's going to go. Show us we'll mock up the promotional products. We'll mock up the, if you're the letterhead and, the old school envelope and all of that, we'll mock up the gift you give your clients along the way and the, email signature that people, associate with you. And all of those are touch points. All of those are points in which people have an interaction with your brand. And so just threading all of that together to be you, to be Rachel.
Hi there. Welcome to the Connecting KC podcast. I'm Rachel Kilmer, also known as Rach the Realtor on the internet, where I love, connecting all things KC. I'm a metro area real estate agent, retired sports reporter, and mom, and probably too old to call myself a TikToker, but honestly, that's how we got here. You can learn more at www.rachtherealtorkc.com. But this show is all about introducing you to all of the movers and shakers, interesting people, heartfelt stories, and funny quirks that make this vibrant community home. So let's get right to it with today's episode of Connecting KC. Welcome into today's episode of Connecting Kansas City, where I am joined by Ashley Mahoney of Hello Big Idea. She founded this company in September of 2015 after exiting from being a high school business teacher for 6 years. She's an Enneagram 3, which hello, also here, ENTJ, Leo, and a middle child. She says, what else do you need to know? That pretty much sums it up. You do need to know, however, that she's been recognized twice by the Kansas City Business Journal as a next-gen leader and a part of the Women Who Mean Business class of 2022. She's on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters and, like all of our guests, calls Kansas City home. So, Ashley, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited. That was wonderful. You made me sound so good.
You are very good. And it's pretty amazing that your business has been around as long as it has. The stats for entrepreneurs and small businesses are not good. When you launched this in 2015, did you have a vision that you'd still be here now and kind of it would be in its current iteration, or what were you expecting to happen?
Oh gosh, what a great question. First of all, you know what? I love to believe that innocence was bliss a little bit when I first started out. And I think that goes pretty far with entrepreneurs sometimes, because I always kind of say, if I knew now, or like then what I knew now, would I still do this? And I think the answer is yes. However, I really started out because I wanted a workshop space. I wanted to call it The Big Idea. And I wanted to teach people how to make their own websites and make their own brands and really empower people. And I think that was my teaching background that was coming into play there. I quickly figured out that was not a great way to make money, because you either needed a high volume ticket or you needed or high volume of people or a really high dollar ticket in order to make that happen. And people, if they had a lot of money to spend in that space, they wanted to pay somebody else to do it, not learn how to do it themselves. And so I pivoted and I went a little bit more of the traditional agency route. And I always had a dream of it being far more than me. I don't think that that's some global, huge, massive, hundreds of employees space, but a 10 to 20 employee range felt in my head like a good idea. Until, all of a sudden you're like, oh, you have to pay payroll to all of those people as well, which means you got to drive the revenue very consistently to make all of that happen. And so I think, yes, in a very innocent way, I loved the idea of being where I'm at now. I think going through the trudge of the last 9 years with a pandemic involved, and, in the end, I'm a service-based business selling time. That's really hard. And so I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to have survived 9 years of entrepreneurship. But at the same time, it was hard. Let's just say that it's been hard.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, think about how much just even like the way we use the internet has changed in the last 9 years. Like everything has changed. What is the kind of breakdown what you guys do? Like what percentage of what you do is websites versus branding versus, selling branded goods and like all the different arms that you guys have?
First of all, we believe brand is like at the core of what most everybody does. You have this great personal brand and you're activating that through TikTok, and you can think of other brands and the ones and we love to take things that aren't very sexy and make them sexy and make things really not boring. That's our bread and butter and what we live for. We do that through brand strategy a lot of the time, and then activating them on the internet or social media or email are probably the three most common channels that we work through. I would say right now about 75% of our business is driven by those types of brands that walk through our door and either need that one-time project or that ongoing partnership in that space. In the last 18 months or so, we did add the complementary arm of promotional products to our business. And that does about 25% or so of our business, but is on pace and trajectory right now to quickly outdo kind of the agency side of the business right now. So yeah, it's just been interesting to grow and pivot. And we added an arm and, like how do we adjust to a non-lumpy revenue? And we had these partnerships, and it is literally the last 9 years have been nothing but problem solving. As you know, you're in a space where you have to problem solve, whether it's for your clients, for yourself, for your own brand. Like it is pivoting and problem solving every day, all the time. So yes.
I actually have problem solver in my LinkedIn bio because I think that's such an praised skill set that you need to be successful in basically any field. Is like, if you can problem solve, you can shoot to the top in basically whatever you're doing. Like get good in Google, basically, right? Like
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't agree more. In fact, in hiring right now, I probe questions and behavioral based questions around, can you figure something out? Or is your version of figuring something out going and just asking the person next to you that also doesn't know? And now you're basically putting on them to figure it out. You know what I mean? And so it is an absolutely underrated skill. 100%.
What do you think? This is a really big question, but what do you think is the biggest mistake brands are making in our current, in 2024? What do you see that makes you cringe and you're like, oh, you're doing it all wrong?
First of all, there's so many brands out there. I like a blanket statement to answer the question in one fell swoop is that too many people blend in with everything else that's going on out there. They're like, oh, this person's doing that, so maybe I need to do that. Or, oh, and it's like, we become basic. Like, remember Basic Girl, like Uggs and Starbucks, like the pumpkin spice latte and everything that we honed in on what a basic B word was for so long, which I love, by the way, a good pumpkin spice. Actually, I'm drinking one right now. But brands do that too, right? They see what everybody else is doing now. They start to act and look, and we call it the sea of sameness. Like people just start to mesh into this world of this sea of sameness, and it becomes really hard and really scary for brands to act and be different. And that is like our bread and butter of creativity. Like creativity is the secret sauce right now to not being the same as everybody else. I love, these are not our clients, but great brands out there that you would recognize that I think have done it really well are like Liquid Death. They put water in a can and made it interesting, like without doing it the way anybody else has done. Or Dollar Shave Club. Like they made a razor, something that we go to Target and buy very regularly, actually interesting and different along the way. So like we oftentimes are like, well, I'm just a real estate agent. I'm like everybody else in Kansas City. It's like, no, you don't. That's not the case at all. How many other real estate agents have a podcast or are doing something different like what you're doing here? And so I think we just see a lot of people that looked and are scared, quite honestly, to do something different because that's not what the world's doing. And it's like, well, that's where your opportunity lies, actually. So I would say that is what I think I don't ever cringe at it. It's just kind of like, oh, it is great. They're doing the same thing everybody else does. I'm uninterested. But yeah, that would be my biggest thing is like, just figure out a way to be different. Like, even if your messaging is slightly different, make it different. Do something different, interesting.
Yeah, I love that for sure. Because I'm a real estate agent. It's a pretty standard, boring job to the outside looking in. And so you might be listening to this and you're like an insurance agent, or you sell medical devices, or have a job that seems like just a boring, regular, you're an accountant, but it's like, you're a person, you're a human being that has your own personality. And so the way you do business is different than everyone else, but how do you communicate that to people? And I think you're right that it is scary to look around and be like, literally everyone else is doing this the way it's always been done. And I'm going to step out here and do this different thing. And it might bomb, it might suck, but there's that way to find out, right? Like, how do you get your clients to step out of the line and take that risk when knowing like there's a chance it could bomb, that like we don't know if it's going to land until we try it?
If you go and look at our work, you would see that there is a notorious space that we are clearly, toot my own horn here, very good at making a brand stand out and look different. And through creativity, I believe that is the secret sauce that the world lacks right this very second. Even with AI coming out now, which is a great tool, by the way, I think it takes a human to run the tool. I think it is just that. It's a tool. It's not an automation. It's not, but now even more people blend in, because now there's a robot that's going out and probing the internet and telling you this is what everybody else is doing. So I'll write, this way as well. And so it just becomes even more of a secret sauce for people to stand out by just even the slightest bit of creativity right now goes so far. So there is no guarantee or ROI on creativity. There's no it's going to land. It's so obvious that nobody else is doing it alongside. And creativity is hard, kind of like problem solving. I mean, creative problem solving in general is just hard, but it's difficult to be creative. And that's why we oftentimes enjoy when people want to outsource it, because it's client for us, but they don't always trust it, right? They don't always trust it because it's not what everybody else is doing. And that's what people are afraid of. And it's expensive. I mean, I would be lying to you if I told you we're super cheap and inexpensive. We're not, like New York City or East or West Coast pricing by any means, but we're certainly not inexpensive to be, creative with your brand. And so there's an investment that comes with that. And that is also risky, and so there is risk involved with making your brand different, but my gosh, the power of a brand and brand storytelling to just be a little different right now in the market, it takes you so far away from competition. Even if you feel like you're in a market like a real estate agent, like an insurance person, that just feels like there's a lot of other people that are just like you. That's actually your superpower, is that there's so many people just like you. Just be a little different and all of a sudden you'll see great success. So
yeah. How much is it when you're working with a brand that you're pulling from like their current personality versus like, do you have to almost assign them a personality? Like, okay, you guys are an insurance office and you're doing great, but like there's no personality here, so I'm going to tell you you're going to be spicy? Or is it like, you guys have a little spice already, so let's work with that? Like, how much, what's the balance between that?
Both. It kind of depends. If they have an existing brand, we're never trying to say like rip that apart and say all of this is no good anymore, here's everything new. Now, if that's their goal because they want to do that, then obviously we can go down that path, but we just call it maturing an existing brand a lot of the time, taking what they've already established and elevating that to a space that people continue to recognize and know. But oftentimes people have DIY'd it, right? Due to budget restraints or cost or whatever at the time. And you're like, I don't have the budget to pay somebody else to do this right now, so I'm going to do it myself, which again, hello, I think we've all done as entrepreneurs in this space. But when you do get to that space where you decide differentiation is really necessary, the investment can go really far. And so, no, we can't start over from scratch, but in the end, people have usually established something along the way and we just elevate it. We bring them to the next level versus scratching everything they've already done, unless they absolutely hate it, like I said. And then of course we can give them a new personality or a new tone of voice or whatever. Even just a tone of voice. Messaging right now is so bland and boring. We read the same emails, we read the same stuff, we read over and over again. And just a little bit of interest right now and just a messaging level stands out. Figure out a way to be really concise with your words, maybe be a little punny or clever, humor. People love brands that are humorous, and those things are hard to do. And so what we do is give a guide to that. Like if you come to us and say, advance this brand, we give you the guide. We've gone as far as to create the guide so much copy and paste that you can put your guide into ChatGPT and have that right as your brand, because it now has the tone of voice and the guides and the language and the messaging, foundation to write from. And that becomes, talk about an amplification of a tool for you right there. Like, yeah, we've done that for 2 clients now that have asked. And I was like, that's actually a really great idea. Of course we'll do that for you.
That's so smart. So when a client comes to you is like, hey, I want to elevate my brand, what are the deliverables? Like, what are you giving them? Are you giving them fonts, like tone of voice, you said logo? I mean, what all does that usually entail?
When we mature a brand, we usually like to do it both verbally and visually. So that can come in a few different ways. Let's say the brand already has a little bit of established, they've made a little money, they're 3 or 4 years old now, they kind of DIY'd it or did it really inexpensive to start out because that's what we have to do and ready to take that to the next level. For us, that's a process. There's some discovery that comes with that. And we sit down and download. Where have you been? Where are you trying to go? What does that look like? What are the goals? Where all of this going? You know, just like dig into it all. From that discovery process, there's a pretty good foundational skeleton that we work from. Specifically on the verbal side, nobody, I don't think, ever has come to us and been like, you know what we need? We need a verbal strategy. We need messaging, right? But once it is absolutely everybody's favorite part of what we deliver to them. They are like, oh my gosh, this was the key to what we were so desperately needing. And we get told it's like so we just load them up with a core messaging strategy. So they can pull call to actions and, you know, taglines, long versions and short versions and elevator pitches and, you know, ways to sell themselves in, you know, the 3 different categories that they exist in. And we customize that to what we heard their needs were very specifically in that kickoff meeting. So no two get the exact same deliverable a lot of the time, but it is what we would call a core messaging strategy that they can just take and use and utilize from there on out. On the visual side, oftentimes an established brand has some kind of mark to it or something that they've worked with. And we don't want to maybe completely erase that unless, again, requested by them, they want to start from scratch and go over. But we oftentimes advance that and we just take what they have and we either elevate it, we give them more options around it, we give them a whole suite of logos to work with, and then we give them design elements and color and type and pattern and texture. And then what that does as it builds and we wrap that all up in a beautiful Dropbox file. But what that does is gives them all these foundational pieces to now go build a website. Because now we're not writing copy from scratch. We have a whole verbal identity that we can pluck from and work off of. Same with the visual pieces. People are like, your websites are so great. Yeah, that was because the brand carried that. Like we just activated the brand in the website space. There is strategy to building your website for a user experience, don't get me wrong, but most people don't understand the photography and the design on that site are actually carrying what's happening there, and that starts in that branding space.
And brand goes so far because I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, brand photography, you mentioned it. I'm like, so I get branding photos done like a couple of times a year, just like updated like stock photos of just me to use for social media. And then my photographers are like, they have a palette that I have to wear specifically these colors and textures because that's what, and then I'm like, okay, if you have a physical office, your interior design probably needs to reflect your brand too. And then your paperwork, you know, like, do you have all of these people in house or like, how do you help people not only like, they're like, okay, great, here's my voice and my logo and stuff, but how do I take it high level where everything I do reflects my brand?
Some of those questions we ask you where the application and where those touch points are in your kickoff with us. And so we're making sure when we're presenting that visually back to you, we've already mocked it up. Show us the wall in your office you want us to design and show where that brand's going to go. Show us we'll mock up the promotional products. We'll mock up the, if you're the letterhead and, the old school envelope and all of that, we'll mock up the gift you give your clients along the way and the email signature that people, associate with you. And all of those are touch points. All of those are points in which people have an interaction with your brand. And so just threading all of that together to be you, to be Rachel, and to when people see it and know that that's you, without even knowing it's you, that's the best compliment, right? Like if they look at something like, oh, I already knew that was Rachel before I heard her voice or something like that. Like that's your brand. That's your brand. And what other people think about you becomes your brand, right? So if your brand as Rachel is peppy and excited and, like Rachel is always so on it, like that's the brand that you've built as well. And so visually making that come to life. I will really quickly tell you, I was on a call with a guy yesterday and his name's Dan. He's like got the most generic name and he's a speaker and an author and he works with huge companies to do this executive coaching and get on stages in front of, Costco. The brands he was naming were just totally wild. And I went to his website and I said, Dan, had I not gotten on a call with you, there is nothing here that would tell me or give me any interest level whatsoever that you are this dynamic of a human being on the World Wide Web. I would never know that. Like, you here on this call are so wonderful. And your website tells is nowhere close to reflecting that. And he said, well, that's why we're on the call today. And of course we went down that path together, but just mimicking that in spaces that people can find you that aren't even necessarily in person, that's working for you when you can't show, if people are Googling you, if people, oh, somebody referred me to Rachel as a realtor. I'm going to go actually look her up on social media first and then social media is going to lead me to her website. And that's going to legitimize you to them before anything else does, maybe before they even reach out or contact you. Right. And so that's really I'm talking social media. We do it all the time. I'm like, I'm going to go look that up on social media to make sure that's real, or I'm going to go see what they're up to over there first before I purchase that or introduce myself to them or whatever. We do it all the time. And just making sure our brand reflects that from beginning to end is pretty powerful.
Last question on this for you as we're running out of time, but what businesses, what brands, what people, what companies are the most surprised by the impact that this has? Like who stands out to you? Like, oh, it was a vet's office or whatever, had no idea how much brand would impact their business. Is there a certain kind that is the most shocked and surprised at how much it does make a difference?
I like to, everybody's surprised when they come to us because we rarely miss, again, tooting our own horn. We just don't miss. And we get a lot of wows. Once they have spent the money to do it, they're like, oh God, that's so good. It's the convincing people that is worth it, right? Because it's expensive and doesn't bring a direct ROI. It's about building your reputation over the next exact lead that's going to walk through your inbox tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question completely right there, but I think realtors and insurance and mortgage people are fun to work with because I mean, back to your original question was like, is there anybody that's overly wowed? And it's like, it's easy to make these people stand out because there's so many of them that blend in. And realistically, please, no offense to any real estate agent that's listening to this, the world's antiquated. Like the old school real estate agent that made all their money in the early 90s can't use the same strategy as a modern day 2024 real estate agent. It's just not the same. And so just putting that branding piece in place goes really far because it is an antiquated world, because your mom and dad are still using their same real estate agent that they used in the 90s that, that did really well with their old school tactics. So
yeah, I love it. I could sit here and nerd out with you forever because I'm like, yeah, that's literally why I go by Rach in a lot of my stuff online, because it's more casual and approachable. And I'm like, I don't want to be the buttoned up in a suit. Brand goes so far, it touches literally everything. It's so fun. So I can see how you have, despite the challenges of it, are 9 years later, because it must be so rewarding to see it click for people like that. Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay. Last couple questions I'm going to ask you. I ask everyone that comes on the show. First one is, what is a great meal that you've had out and about recently in Kansas City?
Earl's Premier. It's my favorite. I'm sure a lot of people say that, but it brings all the aspects. If you can sit at the bar and have a great cocktail there, have some oysters, and the whole atmosphere, it's very Boston, East Coast. Oh God, the vibe, the food, everything's so good.
You say that everyone says that, but I'm not kidding you. It's the widest range of answers ever to this question. Not that long ago, I had someone say Twin Peaks. Their favorite spot in all of Kansas City. I was like, all right, you do you. I'm sure it's great, but yeah, so that's a good one. Okay, last question for you is, where can people find you? They're curious about this. They want to learn more. They want to connect on social. Where do we find Ashley?
Oh, well, that is wonderful. First of all, Hello Big Ideas on every social media platform you could ever want, just at Hello Big Idea. And then I myself have a handle of Ashley is, it spells out creative, but there's an 8 in there. So I think it's CREI8IVE or something like that. I can't remember, but I'm on Instagram. I also just love LinkedIn recently for some reason. So you could find me on LinkedIn as well. Also, just send me an email if anybody wants to connect. I love connecting with people. It's very fun.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Pretty enthused about my own brand, so I hope everyone listening as well. So, yep, guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.